Hi everyone and welcome to Joe Reviews. Today we're looking at the Yale Assure Lock 2 Touch. A couple years ago, I reviewed the Yale Assure Lock 2. I purchased two of these locks, one for my garage and the other for my front entry door. Since that time, the front door lock has started experiencing terrible battery drain. It doesn't hold a charge for more than a day. The garage lock typically lasts around 3 months. As these locks take 4 batteries each, this wasn't going to be sustainable. I decided to try another Yale lock, basically the same lock, but with fingerprint access. Now that I've been using it for a few weeks, there's a clear favorite for me between the two locks I have. So let's get into it. First, the unboxing. Tucked inside the cover are instructions on how to get started. Beneath that is the actual setup guide. Behind the setup guide is the keypad for the outside of the door. Behind the keypad sits a smart module, which allows a Wi-Fi connection to the lock. Underneath these items is the inside portion of the lock, along with the hardware and batteries. Okay, now that I went through everything inside the box, next was installation. Install went relatively smooth, with only one hiccup at the end. Since I already have the Yale app downloaded, I just went to the section to add a device. Here it starts walking you through the instructions for installing the new lock. First, I uninstalled my old Yale lock. I removed the deadbolt as well, which I probably wouldn't have had to, but decided to just in case there would be some sort of issue. I had to extend the deadbolt to fit my door, which is explained clearly in the instructions on how to do. Then I installed the new deadbolt. After that, I installed the lock keypad on the outside of the door. I tucked the cable for the keypad under the deadbolt. Then I installed the mounting bracket on the inside of the door. It screws into the keypad. Next, I connected the cable to the lock. There's a screw inside the battery case that connects to the mounting bracket. I tightened that and then installed the batteries. Installing the lock is simple. The more challenging part could be installing DoorSense. DoorSense is basically a magnet that allows the lock to tell if the door is open or closed. There's two options for installing DoorSense. It can be installed on the door frame, which is easier to install, but not as clean looking, or it can be installed flush inside the door jamb. This is the cleaner look, but requires drilling a hole to put the DoorSense module in. Since I already had DoorSense installed in the door jamb from the previous lock, I was able to skip this step. In my Yale Approach lock review video, I installed the DoorSense module into the door jamb. You can check that out to see how it goes. It's relatively simple to do, but is kind of a tight fit. Once the lock was installed, I had to set up the device in the app. It starts by connecting to the lock, then it installed a firmware update, which took a couple of minutes. After the firmware was updated, I needed to calibrate my lock. Here I had an issue. It didn't want to calibrate. Then after that, I was having issues connecting via Bluetooth to the lock. I eventually was able to get my code programmed in and set up my fingerprint. Setup of the fingerprint was relatively easy and similar to setup on most smart devices that have it. Just keep pressing and removing your fingerprint on the scanner. After I had my code set up and fingerprint scanned, I decided to work on the lock more the next day. For whatever reason, I was able to easily connect via Bluetooth the next day and calibrate the lock. I had issues with setting up the Wi-Fi as well. It turned out to be a simple fix. The smart module wasn't pressed in all the way. Once I had that correct, Wi-Fi setup went smoothly and I added it to Apple Home. I'd say install was pretty simple, some software hiccups along the way, but most people shouldn't have a problem installing this lock. This lock comes in many different variations. You can choose from a Bluetooth only model or Wi-Fi. You can also choose a keyed or key-free option. Plus you can choose a touchscreen option or keypad, and it's available in 3 different color options. Since I was having issues with my last lock, I went with the keyed option this time, just in case I have battery issues again, then I can use a key to get inside. I also chose the Wi-Fi option with the touchscreen and in black suede. Appearance-wise, the lock looks very similar to my Assure 2 lock. The keypad is a little thicker than the regular Assure 2. Not sure if this has something to do with the fingerprint sensor or the fact that this is a keyed option lock. Some top features other than the fingerprint sensor include built-in Wi-Fi with the ability to lock and unlock from anywhere, auto lock and auto unlock features, ability to track who's coming and who's going with Yale's activity feed, IPX5 rated lock built to withstand temperatures from -22 to 140 degrees Fahrenheit. I'll cover most of these features, but want to start off with the fingerprint sensor as this was the biggest new feature for me when compared to the Assure 2. I already discussed how to set up your fingerprints in the lock. Your fingerprint is stored locally on the lock with AES 128-bit security. Yale says the fingerprint sensor features 99% accuracy and has less than a half-second recognition time. In my experience, it's worked better than I expected. It's lightning fast at recognizing my fingerprint and is much quicker and more convenient than unlocking with a code. So far, in my use with the lock, I've only had a couple of instances where my fingerprint wasn't recognized. In those instances, I didn't have my finger positioned correctly on the scanner, but so far this part has been impressive. Yale says you can store up to 20 fingerprints, but only 1 fingerprint per user. I wish Yale would have allowed multiple fingerprints to be added per user. There is a workaround for this if you really want or need to add multiple fingerprints. Basically, it involves just adding a guest and setting them up as a fingerprint user only, you could use multiple different fingerprints this way. Moving on to some other features in the app for the lock. On the main screen, you can cycle through your different locks. It's easy to tell whether they're locked or unlocked. By simply tapping on the lock, you can either unlock or lock the door. It's also easy to see whether the door is open or closed. Then there's the ability to set up guests, which I just briefly mentioned with the fingerprint sensor. But you can also set up codes for guests or members of your family. Yale says up to 250 entry codes can be set up. Great feature for people that have rental properties or visitors coming that need access to your property. You can see in the activities section of the app the different guests using the lock. There's also the ability to set up smart alerts. You decide which events trigger a smart alert, such as a manual lock event, a specific user event, auto lock notifications, and door locking with one-touch keypad. I have mine set up to alert me anytime the door is locked or unlocked. It might be a bit much for notifications, but it's nice to know if someone is entering the house, especially if I wasn't expecting someone. There's also the ability to have notifications for door ajar timing. This notifies you when the door has been left open for a set period of time. This isn't something I have set up for myself, but some people may find this useful, especially if you have a family member who likes to keep the door open for too long. Moving on to the auto lock and auto unlock features. Auto lock feature, as the name implies, will automatically lock the door after you close it. Benefit of this is you never have to be concerned about locking your door after you leave. You can set it up to lock after a specified period of time, or it can do it instantly. If you set it up to lock after a period of time, you can choose to have it locked from 10 seconds to 30 minutes after you close the door. The auto unlock feature uses your phone's location to determine when you leave and will automatically unlock when you return. To do this, you have to turn your phone's location on at all times so the app knows where you are in relation to your home. Then it sets up a 200-meter perimeter around your home as determined by your location on the map. You can adjust where this perimeter is. Once you leave that perimeter, you're considered away, and once you re-enter that perimeter, you're considered home and the door will unlock. I think for some people this feature provides a great benefit, but for me, I don't like giving the app my location at all times. Also, and I talked about this before, I have two entry points at my home, the front door and garage door. Which door I use when I enter my home is roughly 50-50, so I don't always want one or the other door to unlock. I realize my situation is probably uncommon, but is one of the reasons why I don't use the auto unlock feature. Moving on, this lock works with some common smart hub partners such as Apple HomeKit, Samsung SmartThings, Philips Hue, Google Home, and Amazon Alexa. I've set mine up in Apple Home. Asking Siri to unlock the front door is a great option. Unlock the front door. If someone is at the front door and I want an easy way to unlock it without physically going there. It's only now I've realized how lazy we've become as a society. All jokes aside, it's convenient. However, to unlock the front door, this has to be done on an unlocked iPhone or iPad. Otherwise, it'd be easy for someone to break into your home if you could yell loud enough to unlock the front door to a HomePod. A couple other options you have on this lock is the level of volume the lock chime makes when it unlocks or locks. It also makes noises for other instances, such as when you've replaced the batteries or when the batteries are low. The sound it makes when the batteries are low is pretty funny and makes it difficult to forget your lock batteries are low. You can also decide whether you want the status light on the inside of the lock to be on or off. Here are a few of the different lights and their meanings, such as low battery warning, locked, unlocked, and etc. One more thing to discuss is battery life, as I've only mentioned it briefly. This lock is rated to get up to 3 months of battery life. It does take 4 AA's, so changing the batteries 4 times per year can also get a bit pricey. Yale does mention that if you want your lock's batteries to last longer, you could use a Wi-Fi bridge, which plugs into the wall to deliver Wi-Fi to the lock. They don't mention how much longer the lock should last. I do have a bridge I use with my Yale Approach lock for my garage door, and it's been a year since I've installed that lock, and I still haven't changed the batteries on that one. Although that one doesn't have a keypad, I think it does show how long these locks could potentially last for. If the lock does die, in this case, I can use a key to get in. Otherwise, if you choose a keyless option, there are connectors at the bottom where you can use a 9-volt battery to charge the lock enough to get inside and change the batteries. Compared to the regular Yale Assure Lock 2, this one with the fingerprint sensor is basically the same lock, just with the addition of the fingerprint sensor and a bit thicker keypad. That being said, I definitely prefer the lock with the fingerprint sensor versus the regular one. The fingerprint reader is quick and accurate, cutting down the time it takes to enter my home. This lock, which retails for $300, is $40 more expensive than the Yale Assure 2, but to me, the difference in the price is worth it. I was able to get this one on sale at Best Buy for $190, which is cheaper than what I bought the original Yale Assure 2 for. So, for that kind of money, is it worth it? This lock offers a ton of great features and benefits, including auto lock and auto unlock. Installation is relatively easy, and most people shouldn't have an issue. One major thing that concerns me about the lock is battery life. If it can get the rated 3 months of life and not have issues like my last lock, then I'll be really happy with it. To me, if you can find this lock on sale and you're in the market for a smart lock, then I definitely recommend it. Otherwise, at $300, it gets a bit more tricky, as there are other smart locks out there for less, and they provide generally the same features and conveniences. All I can say is from my experience, this lock has so far been great, and it's a nice upgrade from the Yale Assure 2. If I had to rate it, I give it an 8.5 out of 10. That's it for my review. Thanks for watching. Please leave a like and subscribe, and I'll catch you for the next video.